Welcome into Off the Hook Sports. I am your host, Caleb Calhoun. Football season is underway, and if you are a Tennessee fan, it starts off with a bang as the Vols beat Syracuse 45-26 in a game that, in my opinion, honestly wasn't even that close. Tennessee started out with a 17-0 lead. They really poured it on in the first quarter, but they were pouring it on every time Syracuse made somewhat of a run. Tennessee always had a response with Joey Aguilar as the starting quarterback for Josh Heupel, and they end up with a 45-26 win to finish 1-0. They now effectively can keep everything under wraps before they play Georgia to start the SEC season in 2 weeks, because they got out of here with an easy win, and it's very interesting how this will all play out going forward. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn your notifications on, tell a friend. We are excited to be here at Off the Hook Sports. We're building something great here. We want you to be a part of it. We're going to recap the way the game went down and the way this all played out overall is worth noting, because Tennessee, let's be honest, guys, if you're a Tennessee fan and you have followed this program for the past, 15 years, when you saw them unable to convert on the first drive where it ends in a field goal, where they march down the field, they set a tone. Joey Aguilar hitting Mike Matthews over the middle, Joey Aguilar hitting Chris Brazzell, then a pass interference, sets Tennessee up in field goal range, but they can't capitalize, so they had to settle for a field goal. You thought there were going to be some issues. You thought Syracuse was going to find a way to pull out another crazy win in a way that Tennessee would struggle. That ended up not happening, and the Vols dominated. Flat out dominated. Again, I want to say this as upfront as possible. 45-26 doesn't do this game justice. I know Tennessee scored the last touchdown, but remember, Tennessee was up 38-14 in the third quarter. Syracuse scored back-to-back touchdowns. Not back-to-back, but they scored one in the third, one in the fourth to make it 30-26, and then Tennessee scored at the end to make it 45-26. A few just notes that kind of stood out in my head, and we're going to get to the takeaways in a minute, but a couple of notes that stood out in my head. Joey Aguilar, man, that guy's got a lot of moxie. I'll say this much. He's not the most accurate passer, but he knows where to go with the football pretty quickly, and he's mobile. And knowing where to go with football pretty quickly is a huge advantage when it comes to playing quarterback. Nathaniel Kim, you're right. Sideline passes or floaters, though. That is a huge concern going forward. Okay? I'm not here to praise fully Joey Aguilar because, again, the passing game, somewhat solid. I think Tennessee fans really missed somebody who was willing to be aggressive and take the shots that were needed to take to make this thing work. At the same time, how do you overthrow swing passes and things like that? And Joey Aguilar had a big issue doing that all game long. Still, I think you're taking that over Nico Iamaleava or Joe Milton, taking too long to get rid of the ball. Part of this offense is getting rid of the ball quickly, even if you miss on things, and you have to give Joe Aguilar credit. While he did miss on those areas, I mean, he did hit Braylon Staley for that touchdown. He was hitting Chris Brazzell all night. He wasn't afraid to throw over the middle. You saw the different wrinkles in this Josh Heupel offense where they are more than happy to be aggressive over the middle, and that is a real different scenario for them going forward. Tennessee moves to 1-0 on the year. They will face ETSU next week. The ETSU Buccaneers, East Tennessee State, before they face Georgia. Meanwhile, Syracuse is 0-1. They will face UConn, the Connecticut Huskies, a typical old school Big East rivalry for basketball. They will face them next week before they begin ACC play. So Tennessee with a big 45-26 win over Syracuse to start the year. Hey, They won at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And then for those who don't know, Tennessee playing in Atlanta had been a curse before roughly 2012 when they beat NC State. That all changed it, but the curse of Atlanta is real with Tennessee. It cost them a chance to go to the national title game in 2001. It cost them 2 Peach Bowl games in which they were favored in 2002 and 2003. And then it cost them 2 SEC title games in 04 and 07. So winning in Atlanta is always a big deal. They get a crucial Power 5 game off their back, and that can't be understated because Tennessee doesn't have the toughest schedule. So part of the schedule had to involve making sure you beat the teams you're supposed to beat. And Tennessee didn't just beat Syracuse. They handled them relatively well. No disrespect to Fran Brown. Fran Brown and the Orange did a pretty good job on this game. Honestly, I just think they were outmatched talent-wise. Stephen Jelly did as much as he could in this matchup, and it was only so far he could go. When you look at the actual talent matchups between Tennessee and Syracuse, obviously Tennessee's got a big concern with defensive tackle as Jackson Moy suffered a season-ending injury. And that's a real big concern for Tennessee going forward, largely because they were already replacing three defensive tackles. They tried to go 6 deep under Rodney Garner, and they had to replace 3 just this year. And one of the primary starters who had experience was supposed to be Jackson Moy. Reportedly, again, we don't know for sure, but reportedly, this is a season-ending injury by Jackson Moy. Ricky Gibbs III also got hurt in this game. So we are hoping for the best for him, not as a fan, but as humans in general. You just hope for the best for people who get hurt. You never want to see them suffer serious injuries. So again, hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications. The show was represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee Trial Attorney, Play to Win. Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We broadcast you live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. New and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. Obviously, we are not at our typical time. It's a recap of a major game. And let's go ahead and dive into the key stories of the game, which is we will start with our 5 takeaways. Our biggest takeaways from Tennessee's win over Syracuse. Tennessee beat Syracuse 45-26 at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta to open the season on Saturday. The Vols ranked number 24 in the AP poll, number 18 in the coaches poll. They should be in great shape going forward. What are the biggest things that stood out from Tennessee beating Syracuse? Okay, the biggest thing to me that stood out is the tempo was back. Now, you saw some obvious moments where Syracuse was trying to fake injuries with their tempo, but it still is a big deal that nowadays when you try to fake injuries, you have to burn a timeout, and Syracuse had to do that in the first half against Tennessee. This is a notable point because I've been very big on this for a while. Tennessee's offense is dependent on the ability to run tempo, and the fact that there were punishments for faking an injury to slow down tempo spells out the fact that Tennessee is going to have a much greater advantage going forward this year. Joey Aguilar is an aggressive quarterback. He will throw the ball down the field. He won't hesitate to make a decision. That advantage is only there if the tempo is there. And Syracuse faked injuries multiple times in this game, guys. Multiple times. But at the end of the day, the Tennessee tempo was there and it worked out, and it turned out to be a huge benefit. Tennessee's tempo was a part of why Syracuse was a part of why they were able to blow out Syracuse in this game. Syracuse did everything they could to stop it, and there just wasn't much they could do. At the end of the day, they were limited because of how great the tempo was. So the tempo was back with Josh Heupel's offense. It was the fastest pace we had seen since Tennessee played in 2022 under Hendon Hooker. How long that lasts, we don't know, but this was a great start for the Vols in terms of tempo. Now, second takeaway. The defense suffered injuries, but still managed to look elite. The Vols finished the game officially with 5 sacks, which really stands out as a testament to how they played. And it wasn't just one person getting all those sacks, okay? Aaron Carter got a sack. Jalen McMurray on a dive-up blitz got a sack. Edwin Spillman got a sack. Joshua Josephs got a sack. And Nathan Robinson got a sack. So that stands out. But on top of that, they forced Syracuse to play a very poor game overall offensively. Steven Jelly in his first start, 23 of 40, 274 yards with a touchdown. Only completed 57% of his passes. Also had an interception on the night. Now, they did have a total of 103 yards rushing, but that's only 377 yards. This day in college football is not a big deal when you're able to do something like that. Meanwhile, the defense as a team had 5 sacks. Stands out and also withstood key injuries. Jackson Moy, we mentioned going down, but Nathan Robinson stepping in for Jackson Moy, all he did was have that sack we talked about, and he had a strip sack. Forced a fumble. That resulted in Colton Hood recovering it. Colton Hood, by the way, had 3 pass breakups, and he ran this one in for a touchdown, and that was a huge part of the game for Tennessee to really help put the game out of reach. So with that in mind, we've got to be honest and say that the defense still looks elite despite the injuries. Will it last? We don't know. There's a lot of questions about Tennessee's defense. Syracuse had a lot of questions surrounding them when they played real competition last year, but this is a great start. So kudos to the defense for forcing multiple turnovers, playing elite in the run game, doing everything necessary. Defense looked elite, even though Jackson Moy got hurt. All right. Moving on. Offensive line seems able to withstand new starters. Huge deal here for Tennessee. A huge question surrounding the Vols all year was, all offseason, was how good their offensive line can be. Remember, they lost 4 starters. It was one thing to lose a tackle. They lost John Campbell Jr. at right tackle. They returned Lance Hurd at left tackle. David Sanders Jr. was probably not going to be as good as John Campbell Jr. last year when fully healthy. But Campbell, for those who don't know, was hurt to start the year last year. So a fully healthy David Sanders Jr., despite being a freshman, with a fully healthy Lance Hurd, who was also hurt last year at the start of the year, the first half of the year, was going to be better than a banged-up Lance Hurd and a banged-up John Campbell Jr. That turned out to be the case. Tennessee had 246 total rushing yards, and you can't sit there and say it was all about the quarterback in that point, because Joey Aguilar, yes, he did have 6 carries for 34 yards, while Syracuse got a couple of sacks. But at the same time, without Joey Aguilar, if he's not in the game at all, well, you're still looking at roughly 220 rushing yards. So Joey Aguilar, honestly, to a certain degree, almost held them back when you look at the rushing yards. He didn't. He ran the ball well. But the point is, Tennessee ran the ball well. Star Thomas, 12 carries for 92 yards. Deshaun Bishop, 11 carries for 82 yards and a touchdown. Peyton Lewis, 8 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown. Dwayne Morris, 2 carries for 2 yards. This team did a very good job of running the football, and it really, 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 really stood out for them as they were able to make sure they won this game on that front. Another takeaway in this game, penalties still seem to be a problem. Now, penalties with this program are going to be natural. Josh Heupel's offense is not complex, but it has a lot of pre-snap reads, and pre-snap reads lead themselves to more penalties. So Tennessee in this game had 7 penalties for 65 yards. Last year, they would surrender 66.85 yards per game on penalties, which is 118th in the country. They've got to play cleaner football. This isn't the worst game they played on that front, and you have to accept that they're going to have more penalties than average because of what they do. At the same time, against Syracuse, on a neutral site that was basically a home game for them. You got to do a little bit better than that. Syracuse had 4 penalties for 30 yards. One of them set up a Tennessee score to open the game where it put Tennessee in field goal range and they kicked field goal to go up 3-0. You just can't have those types of mistakes. With that in mind, yes, I do think that Tennessee and the penalties are a. Let's go ahead and move forward with the other takeaways. The most notable one, and this is an eye test one, the wrinkles in the offense. Tennessee threw a bunch of new wrinkles in the offense this week. And I thought they were going to hide them for Georgia, and maybe they still have some new ones to hide for Georgia, but they clearly let it be known they were going to have a different offense this year. And it started on the first play of the game where Joey Aguilar hit Mike Matthews over the middle on a slant. And Josh Heupel was trying to send a message to say, hey, you know what? I am out here as a guy who likes to throw it up. And if I don't throw it up, I'm going to run it down your throat. But I still want the passing game to be successful. So I'm going to throw it over the middle if you play this shell 3-3-5, which Syracuse did a lot of the game. And Josh Heupel said, fine, I will work you over the middle non-stop. And he did just that. And in the process of doing just that, he helped Tennessee have a field goal drive on their opening drive. And then finally, when he was able to lull them to sleep, he hit Braylon Staley on a deep ball down the middle for a touchdown. That was a big deal for Tennessee at the time. It speaks to what Josh Heupel was able to do. And the new wrinkles in the offense, we don't know how deep they go, but I'll just point this out. Last year, Tennessee seemed to be caught off guard by the 3-3-5 shell that everybody was running against them. It didn't help that they had a receiving core that just wasn't meant for the system, and Brew McCoy, who was coming off a broken leg, Dante Thornton, who was coming off a season-ending injury, and Squirrel White, who played the year with a separated shoulder. This year with Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley and Chris Braswell, they should seem to be in a lot better shape for that. But it also didn't help that Nico was slow to get rid of the ball, and the 3-3-5 shell was something that Heupel didn't prepare for. This was what Missouri unveiled in 2023 to beat Tennessee when Eli Drinkwitz was all, we stand on business, Josh, trying to make that point. He unveiled that defense. Everybody's unveiled it since then. Heupel's had to adjust. The passes over the middle show that he was willing to adjust. The question becomes, how deep do the new wrinkles go? Is it just for this game? Was it all revealed in this game, or did Heupel hide some stuff for when he knows he will inevitably have to play Georgia in 2 weeks? My thoughts go with Heupel having to hide stuff when he inevitably has to play Georgia in 2 weeks. We're going to see how it plays out, to be fair, but just on the surface, it does come across that the new wrinkles, Heupel showed just enough to make Georgia prepare a little bit extra, but was not going to show too much to make them ready for what he was going to deliver. And those are the biggest 5 takeaways from Tennessee's win over Florida. The tempo was back. The defense still looks elite despite injuries. Offensive line seems to be able to withstand new starters. Penalties will still be a problem, and new wrinkles on the offense. Our torchbearers, Tennessee football torchbearers in the Vols, 45-26 win over Syracuse to open the 2025 season. We're going to get rolling. Who were the players who stood out more than anybody else? Who were the players who made the biggest impact? And will this be a thing long term? We'll project that as well. We start with Braylon Staley. Is there a young Jalen Hyatt on the hands for Tennessee? Braylon Staley is the slot receiver. He had 4 catches for 95 yards, including a 73-yard touchdown catch. Staley is not the best receiver on this team. I'm going to say this to you guys up front. Mike Matthews is. But you have to think about this from the time when Brew McCoy was the go-to receiver for Tennessee in 2022 dictating coverage. Him dictating coverage allowed Jalen Hyatt to ball out. I didn't think that would be the case this year because in my mind, I felt that there wasn't going to be as much of a focus on Mike Matthews, no matter how well he performed early, as there was on Brew McCoy or even Cedric Tillman before then in 2022, because they had both proven themselves at different spots. However, there seems to be that focus. Teams are not going to let the whiteouts like Mike Matthews beat them deep. So Josh Heupel has no problem throwing it to Braylon Staley, and it worked out. 4 catches, 95 yards, and a touchdown. And if he continues that, even though I thought Braylon Staley would be splitting time with Boo Carter as a starter in the slot, and I still feel that to a certain degree, even though that didn't happen here. I also maintain the fact that Braylon Staley, I always thought he was the best receiver in the offense. He really showed it in this game. And when you take that into account, it is really hard to think that Braylon Staley isn't going to be a superstar for Tennessee. I still think Mike Matthews will be the biggest star among the receivers long term. He's not as proven, and that's going to make defenses not scheme for him the way they did Brew McCoy or Cedric Tillman. But in this game, Braylon Staley was a star. He gets a torchbearer, and he deserves a lot of recognition for the way he played. The next torchbearer, Arian Carter. We said from the start of the year that Arian Carter could turn into the best linebacker for Tennessee football since Kevin Burnett, at least the first All-American for Tennessee football since Kevin Burnett, and maybe the best linebacker since Al Wilson. Arian Carter had a lot of hype on the recruiting trail. Didn't play in 2023 because it was his true freshman year and he was developing. 2024, he was balling out for Tennessee and stopping the run, but his play in coverage was a real issue. 2025, it was expected he would improve what he does in coverage. I think it is safe to say he did that, given what was done by Syracuse in this game, which they weren't able to throw the ball. Yes, they had 274 yards passing for Stephen Jelly, but a lot of that was garbage time. Stephen Jelly was still 23-40 with only 6.9 yards per an attempt. Arian Carter did an incredible job keeping things in check. He had 9 total tackles, 3 of which were solo, a sack on the day, all over the field. Arian Carter is a torch bearer, deserves all the recognition in the world. Another torchbearer. All right, this is hard for me to admit, but Star Thomas. Now, you could do this collectively because Deshaun Bishop had 11 carries for 82 yards and a touchdown. Peyton Lewis had 8 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown, but Star Thomas was the best running back on the day for Tennessee. He had 12 carries for 92 yards, and then he caught a 7-yard touchdown pass. Star Thomas, the Duke Blue Devils transfer, looked clearly better than anybody else on Tennessee's roster. Now, here's the crazy part. Star Thomas was a Duke transfer. He transferred from an ACC school and was at a Group of 5 school before that. Deshaun Bishop was the walk-on. They combined for 174 yards. The walk-on and the Group of 5 transfer combined for 174 yards. Meanwhile, the Power 5 4-star commitment, Peyton Lewis, only had 8 carries for 38 yards. Big deal. We're going to see how this plays out long-term. But as of right now, Peyton Lewis, doing what I expected him to do, didn't seem to hit that next level, and that is a big concern. Another torchbearer, Joey Aguilar. Now, Joey Aguilar, we have to criticize. Missed at least 4 easy horizontal passes because he threw too hard or overthrew them. That's a knock on him. But he's still a gunslinger, and that stands out. And because he was a gunslinger, he finished 16-28 for 247 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Big deal. Also carried the ball 6 times for 34 yards. When you take that into account, you have to give Joey Aguilar the credit he deserves. He, as the starter for Tennessee, really stepped into the role, and even with his flaws, he looks very comfortable in the role. And I can't say a quarterback has looked comfortable in the role as the starter for Tennessee under Josh Heupel since Hendon Hooker. Joe Milton never looked comfortable. Heck, Joe Milton did not look comfortable before he lost his starting job to Hendon Hooker. And on top of that, Nico Iamaleava didn't look comfortable last year. So a big plus to Joey Aguilar, who, again, you can't overthrow those horizontal passes. You just can't, guys. Big deal, big problem. But at the end of the day, he was comfortable. And that is a huge part of the way this offense operates. So Joey Aguilar is a torch bearer. The final torch bearer on the night is, get ready for this. Is everybody ready? Colton Hood. Colton Hood broke up 3 passes, had 3 solo tackles, 4 tackles overall. Most notably recovered a fumble, ran it in for a touchdown. But I think what really stood out is Ricky III got banged up in this game. Jamal McCoy is playing banged up because Jamal McCoy is not 100%. Jordan Thomas is not 100% coming back from an injury. So Idris Rook, Andre Turrentine, those were the 2 safeties. Ty Redmond got a lot of action because of the lack of depth, even though this is supposed to be a strength for Tennessee. All that being said, Colton Hood balled out, picking up a fumble that was recovered by Nathan Robinson, the defensive line, and running it back for a touchdown. Stands out for Colton Hood. This dude is elite. He gets all the credit in the world. He is a torch bearer. How long it lasts, we don't know, but he had a great start to the season, and he validated Tennessee's decision to pick him up in the offseason as a transfer from Colorado, despite the fact that he was promised to be the successor to Travis Hunter. Hood will likely be a utility player for Tennessee, and this was a great start for him in this game. So that rounds out the top 5 performers for Tennessee in their 45-26 win over Syracuse. It is time for the report card. Tennessee's report card in the Vols 45-26 win over Syracuse. Who stood out per position group and who did not? We get rolling, and we started with what we just talked about, which was that quarterback. Quarterback on paper should be an epic performance for Tennessee against Syracuse. Joey Aguilar completed 16 of 28 passes for 247 yards. That is 8.8 yards per attempt. Okay, which is pretty good. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Add in the 34 yards he had rushing, and Joey Aguilar was incredible. However, Joey Aguilar, while he wasn't sacked at all, it wasn't like he had to take a sack. It wasn't like it was because he got rid of the ball quickly, even though he does. He managed to miss a lot of easy throws. Swing passes, screen passes, overthrowing passes over the middle, throwing them too hard. With that, they were so erratic. We had to give him a B-. Should have been better, but you can't ignore how he played in those moments with the swing passes and screen passes. All right, running back. We talked about Star Thomas, 12 carries, 92 yards. Deshaun Bishop, 11 carries, 82 yards. Peyton Lewis, 8 carries, 38 yards. And then Dwayne Morris, 2 carries for 2 yards as a team that lost 2 yards. Let's take the team stat in there and just throw out Aguilar because the rest are running backs, okay? You're talking at that point, 23, 31. You're talking 33 carries for 212, 214. You're running 34 carries for 212 yards if you assume that the team rushing stat is related to Tennessee's running backs. You're talking 34 carries for 212 yards. Last time I checked, that's over 4 yards a carry, and that's all the way down the line, and the starters all averaged. Star Thomas averaged 7.7, Deshaun Bishop 7.5, and then Peyton Lewis 7.8, very close. That's enough for the running back group to get an A when you consider Star Thomas' 7-yard touchdown catch. All right, wide receiver unit. I'm going to go B+. Braylon Staley, 4 catches, 95 yards, a touchdown. Chris Brazel, 5 catches, 62 yards. Mike Matthews, 2 catches, 29 yards. Kudos to all of them. Miles Kitzelman, as part of the offense, 2 catches, 10 yards, and a touchdown. We'll get to tight ends, so I'm going to hold off on that. But the other ones, Braylon Staley, Chris Brazel, and Mike Matthews. The good sign is Joey Halsley is doing what I called for, which is the old David Coughlin model of you have 3 receivers. You have a go-to, a complimentary, and a guy in the slot. He's doing that here, and in that situation, Braylon Staley was able to ball out. With that in mind, just doing that is enough to give them a B because they don't need that many people to rack up yards. But nobody got 100, and there were a lot of other things that could have happened. A couple of receivers could have had more yards, more catches, and maybe even a touchdown. So with that, I'm going B plus. All right, moving on. Tight end to B. Miles Kisman, 2 catches for 10 yards. He did have a touchdown, an 8-yard touchdown. Major props to Miles Kisman for that. But they weren't used as much in the passing game as they should be. The blocking was solid. That's what they get to be. But they need to get more involved in the passing game. Offensive line, A. I can't believe I'm saying this. A. Tennessee replaced 4 offensive linemen, most notably Cooper Mays, Andre Carrick, and Javonte Spraggins in the middle, but also John Campbell Jr. at right tackle. And last year, Lance Hurd wasn't fully healthy. Hurd was fully healthy. They replaced him with David Sanders Jr., and they had 3 new offensive linemen, William Satterwhite, Sam Pendleton, Wendell Moore Jr., and Sis Bear getting involved in the rotation. How did all this work out? Tennessee did not allow a sack on the day. That has to stand out. Offensive line gets an A. Defensive line, we wish the best for Jackson Moy, but they still get an A. They still get an A. Nathan Robinson forced a fumble that Colton Hood returned for a touchdown. This team had 3 sacks because of the push of the defensive line. There's no denying they get an A. Linebackers get an A. Linebackers get an A, and this is largely due to Aaron Carter and Jeremiah Thielander playing so well. Jeremiah Thielander came away with an interception in this game, and Aaron Carter led the team in total tackles. Had 9 total tackles, 3 solo, a sack, and a tackle for a loss. Probably the same thing. And also, you could add in the edge rushers on this, by the way, but we'll get to that in a second. But the linebackers did exactly what they were supposed to do with an A, and you're going to see this long term. They looked like they were very comfortable. Remember, last year, Aaron Carter was comfortable starting. Jeremiah Thielander wasn't ready. Keenan Pili was supposed to help, but Keenan Pili was coming off a season-ending injury, and then he suffered another one, so Jeremiah Thielander had to start when he wasn't ready. And Aaron Carter, while he was the starter, wasn't fully developed yet, so not being fully developed and either having a complimentary linebacker who was coming off an injury or wasn't ready to go, which was Aaron Carter's whole year last year, was going to hinder him. He doesn't have that this year because Jeremiah Thielander is coming back. That's a big deal. That helps them a lot, and I think Tennessee should be excited about what those 2 guys can bring to the table. We're not sure yet, but we have to give credit to the way this all would play out. All right, we're moving on with our report card. Edge rushers. I still believe in Jordan Ross long term as the edge rusher, but I have to go by what I see, and at this moment, it is undeniable that Joshua Josephs is living up to the hype that he could be the next James Harris. 6 total tackles, 3 solo tackles, a tackle for a loss, a sack. Joshua Josephs was all over the field, wreaking havoc on Steve Angeli. And with that in mind, the edge rushers have to get an A. Again, we don't know how this is all going to play out, but this was a great start to the season for them. And with that in mind, and with the help they had on the other side of Dominic Bailey and Tyree West, both returning players who could be elite, you got to give a lot of credit to Joshua Josephs and what he was able to do. So I'm going to go ahead and say the edge rushers get an A. I got no complaints with what they were able to do. Defensive backs. All right, C+. Now, this is a hot take. But at the end of the day, you can't ignore the fact that Steve Angeli completed 23 of 40 passes for 274 yards and a touchdown and an interception, and completed an average almost 7 yards per completion. Doesn't seem great. It's too good when you run up against a Tennessee defense that's experienced and has way more talent everywhere over the field. With that in mind, I just don't think there's any way to avoid that this unit deserves a C+. Now, fully healthy Jerome McCoy, we might be telling a different story. Ricky Gibson III getting hurt in the game. If that doesn't happen, we might be telling a different story. But that's not the story we're telling. We're telling the story over how they actually performed in the moment during this game. And that's solely in a vacuum. And when you take it solely in a vacuum, there was no way around the fact that this unit struggled severely at times. I mean, again, Steve Angeli had completed 23-40 passes for 274 yards. And it's not like Syracuse ran the ball well. He had 44 carries for 103 yards, at 2.3 yards per carry. The only issue is, even though they had three touchdowns, and Yasin Willis is a star, 23 carries for 91 yards, 4 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns. Truth of the matter is, the secondary did not do its job the way it needs to stop the pass, and that had a huge negative impact on this team, and it's why they weren't able to put Syracuse away. Now, again, they should eventually, they were always going to eventually put him away. Defense wasn't terrible. Cornerbacks and defensive backs weren't terrible. Secondary wasn't terrible. Based on the standards last year, they didn't meet it, but those are impossible standards, and they still surpassed the standards of 2022 and 2021. And even 2023 for that matter. But this was not a good look with the way they finished the season. Okay, now we go over to special teams. And this is kind of interesting. Let's just talk place kicking. Well, Max Gilbert kicked 1 field goal. It's a 34-yard field goal. He hit it. He also was 6 of 6 on extra points, interestingly enough. Max Gilbert also, for those who don't know, managed to hit a field goal beyond 50 yards last year. Not relevant to how he played in this game, but enough to prove that he is an elite kicker, and that's not the only reason we have to tout the place kicking in this game. Because also, with the place kicking in this game, we have to point out that Josh Turbeville, every kickoff he had in this game, every single one, and don't forget, Tennessee beat them 45-26. Every single one, which would involve 6 touchdowns, a field goal, meaning that's 7 plus a halftime kickoff, 8. All 8 kickoffs he had went for touchbacks. Huge deal. A+ for special teams. How about punting? Well, again, Tennessee moved the ball so well they didn't have to do it that much in this game. But Jackson Ross did punt 4 times for 173 yards, averaged 43.8 yards per punt. Seems low, right? But he pinned 3 inside the 20. And his long was 56. He pinned 3 inside the 20. You get a huge win on that front. And Jackson Ross, again, is a heck of a punter. The only bad punt for Tennessee by Jackson Ross was Ricky Collins. What was in the Ricky Collins actually called it. He fair called it. The quarterback who lost his job to Steven Jelly. It was in the second quarter with 5:33 left. It was a 39-yard punt and Tennessee punted it from their own 10. Should have been longer, but at the same time, from their own 10, you know, a lot of pressure can come up on that point. So you give Jackson Ross a bit of a break on that. Punting still gets an A+ to us. The return game is an incomplete. The return game is a huge incomplete because Braylon Staley had 1 2-yard punt return. Peyton Lewis a 24-yard kick return. That's basically used to the 25-yard line. I could honestly go for a C-, even go for a D here with this. Just not enough evidence. I'll probably just go straight C for the return game because they just didn't show or prove enough to give me an opinion one way or another. But at the end of the day, Tennessee did dominate Syracuse 45-26. Up next for Tennessee is a home game against ETSU right now. And they will play ETSU next week, and then they'll play Georgia the week after. Up next for Syracuse is a home game against UConn. Thank you guys all for tuning in. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones up by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live from the Tedros Ford Lincoln Studio, your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealership. Tedros Ford Lincoln. Thank you guys all for tuning in. I will be back Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern to talk about this game and to talk about the rest of the college football weekend. We're going to see how this all plays out. Thank you guys all for tuning in. You guys all have a great rest of your Saturday. College football is back, baby, with Caleb Calhoun. This has been the recap of Tennessee Syracuse. You guys have a great rest of your day, And this has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. I will